morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenhoff coming to you live from our studio in Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us. You can call. You can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. 11 days to Election Day.
We're almost at single digits.
Almost at single digits. Early voting is underway, so you can go cast your ballots. Make sure you do that. Mm-hmm. Be a voter. Everybody who's anybody is a voter.
Yeah.
And your vote counts. More this year probably than any other year before. Mm-hmm. We have a jam-packed show coming your way today. Coming up at 10:33, we've talked a lot about tariffs. We're going to learn even more today about tariffs, how they work, who it affects. Donald Trump, of course, has said repeatedly he plans to raise tariffs across the board, and that is going to essentially take care of all of our problems. So James Vanderloo, who is the head at the OEC Group Milwaukee, a global freight forwarder and a leading company in trans-Pacific trade. James Vanderloo joining us at 10:33 to talk tariffs. If you have questions, text them in now at 855-752-4842. It's Friday. That means Dan Shafer will be here from the Recombobulation area after the 11 o'clock news. At 11:33, we'll lighten it up a little bit with Tyler Maas from Milwaukee Record and see what is going on with that group. They're a lot of fun. We're going to wrap it up today, as we always do now, with This Shouldn't Be a Thing, Sister Act edition. It's a good one.
This one's a fantastic one. I think one for the ages.
Yeah, it's a good one. Greg found this earlier this morning. It should make you laugh.
Yes.
It should make you laugh. I wanted to start off, though. This was big news that hits just as we were getting off the air yesterday.
Yes.
Bob Coles, who has been a Republican lawmaker in Wisconsin for almost 4 decades, announced on Civic Media, on Rational Revolution, hosted by Mark Becker, that he's going to be supporting Kamala Harris. Calvin, let's play that clip, please, from Robert Coles.
I probably should have done this sooner, but there was concern, about blowback and public safety and all that. So I'm going to be ready for that, and I really think this is the most important, one of the most important things I've done, and hopefully people will accept that and listen to me. Those that have trusted me and believed in me will think about that, and if they're undecided, that we have to make a change here, and Trump has to be defeated, and we have to protect the Constitution, and the country will go on.
And he continues with, even with some liberal things that Harris might do or might not do, you have to have the foundation of the Constitution to protect democracy. If you don't have that, we will disappear.
I thank you, State Senator Coles.
Major respect for your willingness to do that and take this risk.
Yep. Mayor Sean Riley, same. All the Congressman Upton from Michigan, all the Republicans who are stepping forward and endorsing Kamala Harris. And really, honestly, it's true. You have to think about the blowback. The blowback is not, and we're not talking about like, oh, they're going to pick at you. I heard a story, and I've been going back and forth on this with regard to like, well, why aren't more sitting GOP leaders endorsing Kamala? Doc Rivers, not a politician. He is the coach of the Bucks.
Right.
He did a get out the vote early, just get like nonpartisan.
Just encouraging people to vote and be part of the process.
He got death threats for
encouraging people to vote.
Yeah. So can you imagine a GOP either sitting, retiring, or former going against your party? Like we said yesterday, boom. Well, I guess Mr. Coles is a liberal now.
Yeah. Or he's a rhino.
Just a full-blown liberal ready to just tackle all the liberal agendas.
Right. He's been in the Wisconsin State Legislature for 42 years.
Yeah. He is seen as one of the rational Republicans that were left in the state Senate and in Madison.
Yep.
And it's going to be a shame to lose him.
It is.
But I mean, hopefully in 11 days, people will come out and show that fair maps breeds more compromise, more working together, not just
more response to your constituents.
Exactly.
Actually accomplishing things your constituents, I don't know, want.
Yeah.
Big props to State Senator Robert Coles, Republican from Green Bay, announcing yesterday on Civic Media's show Rational Revolution, hosted by Mark Becker. Becker is the former chair of the Brown County GOP.
Yeah.
And is now part of Wisconsin Republicans for Harris Walls.
And that's, in Civic Media, we've got Todd Alba, who works with the Lincoln Project.
Todd Alba was a Republican for 30 years.
Yeah. These are not people who are walking away from the Republican Party because it's cool. It's because their party has failed them and has changed in such a way that does not resemble, there's a lot of things about the GOP I don't enjoy, but at least at one point growing up, I knew they believed in democracy, the process, and voting and rights. But that's not what they see. And you see so many of these individuals, such as Mr. Becker, Todd Alba, coming forward and saying,
Trigby Olson from the Lincoln Project.
Rick Wilson.
Yes.
The list goes on and on.
George Conway.
Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
So but the problem is, folks, is that the more every day more GOP leaders come out and endorse Kamala Harris. But every day I see Donald Trump on the world stage making a buffoon of himself and people thinking, that's my guy. I'll never understand it. Somewhere down the line, I said this, Dan Shafer will write a book in like 30 years that will explain this election, and I'll read it. But it boggles my mind that one man can be such a traumatic failure at things and yet is enjoying so much popularity.
The election is going to be close.
Yes.
It is. And we're going to talk in just a little bit about don't despair.
Yes.
Don't despair. And I certainly understand being anxious and the anxiety. We're going to get to that in just a little bit, but it is things like this that give me hope. And we still have 11 days. Maybe we will see more Republicans come out.
I think we will.
And announce their support for Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it, honestly. I think we're going to see more and more. I think we'll see some more senators and congressmen. Who knows? Maybe someone who's actually sitting in the Congress right now.
Wouldn't that be something?
I would send them flowers. I would send them flowers and say, thank you for your bravery. It sounds like hyperbole, but really.
We'll send them flowers together.
There we go.
There's your opportunity, guys. You want a bouquet? We'll send you a bouquet for doing the right thing. And I just find it interesting that the Republicans who are coming out now and endorsing Kamala Harris, at least in my estimation, have more credibility than a Tulsi Gabbard who is now endorsed Donald Trump.
Who apparently, and someone correct me if I am wrong, she has officially joined the Republican Party.
I believe so, yes.
And I saw a bunch of tweets saying, I thought you already were in the Republican Party. That's the thing is, like, for me, I feel like, and this happened in 2020 with Biden, 2008 with Obama, and we're seeing it now. When GOP members come and endorse the Democratic, the liberal, whomever, the left candidate, there is an enjoyment. There's a welcome. Here we go. Let's all do this together to maintain democracy. Whereas you get like Tulsi Gabbard and Bob Jr. and any other sort of wishy-washy. Jill Stein is embraced in their community, and they think that they are they think they are the bee's knees. Like, we've got Tulsi Gabbard. I'm like, why do you think that's a flex?
Yeah. It's not quite the flex you think it is.
Exactly. New segment.
Not quite the flex you think it is?
Yeah.
I like that. Do you have any thoughts or feelings about Bob Coles coming out yesterday? Longtime Wisconsin Republican, 42 years in the state legislature. Mm-hmm. Any feelings about him coming out yesterday in support of Kamala Harris? 855-752-4842.
Are there any listeners right now who are leaning, who have changed their mind, have decided to vote for Harris? I know that the ones who call and tell us we're terrible aren't probably changing their mind.
For that, I think that's pretty much a guarantee.
But even still, I want them to still think about it too. I guess that's an ideal paradise. But is there anybody listening right now? Call or text. Have you changed your mind in the past few weeks, maybe the month? Maybe you've seen something. Let us know. I honestly would really enjoy hearing from people who, I understand being behind a candidate. I understand, like, oh my gosh, this is my guy.
This is my guy, yeah.
My gal. But there has to come a breaking point.
For a certain segment of MAGA supporters, there is no breaking point.
No.
He could do anything.
Yeah, that's
considering. Look at the cumulative effect of all the things he's done just in the last 10 years, and nobody blinks an eye. Starting with the Access Hollywood tape, and
making fun of the reporter,
making fun of the disabled reporter.
Yeah,
I mean, it goes on and on and on, and there is no line for again those hardcore Trump supporters. Everything he does will always be fine.
And really, another thing that's going to hopefully be looked at in the years to come is how the mainstream media has failed us in the reporting of those things.
Absolutely.
Right now, Twitter is all light of like a devastating October surprise. Nothing will happen that will derail his campaign.
No.
Because they're already saying, look out for deep fakes, look out for, doctored AI videos. Don't worry about that stuff. Head down, move forward, vote, tell your friends, share what you know, be a part of the solution.
I think that's a really important part of it is share what you know.
Yep, that we're going to keep pushing that manner too.
Absolutely, because you are the ambassadors who can then go to your community and explain, for example, why the latest constitutional amendment on this ballot is a bad idea.
Yeah. Yes.
It is a bad idea. It is yet again another effort to narrow the window of who is allowed to vote. And this constitutional amendment wouldn't necessarily change anything right off the bat, but it opens the doorway to, again, narrow that definition. Instead of us wanting more Americans to vote, this will essentially make it harder.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a very pro-democratic thing to do.
Not at all.
We're going to tell you why we all need to take a breath when we come back. I will take a cleansing breath together. Stay close. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
What else to do about it? place you only dream of, where your soul is always.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Sweet Cal B coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call. You can text. The number is 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Jabba the Musk continues to actively ruin. Coming up after the 10:30 news, we are going to be joined by James Vanderloo, and we're going to talk about tariffs and what tariffs do and who they affect and who actually, I don't know, seems important, pays for them.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you telling me that first you're telling me that China's not going to pay for all the tariffs? Are you telling me that Mexico didn't pay for the wall?
Mexico did not pay for the wall.
Oh, I've made a huge mistake.
Oops. And just a heads up, Todd Alba today, he follows us from noon to 2 p.m. across the Civic Media Network. He will be having former Republican Congressman Reed Ribble on his show. That should be a great, great conversation. Make sure you join Todd today from noon to 2 p.m. As promised, we're going to all join together and hold hands and take a collective cleansing breath. We got 11 days, people.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of different things on Twitter, and people are freaking out, and they're looking at polls, and it's like, oh my God. Take a breath. Stay positive. Stay hopeful.
Yes.
And think about what we can do
Yeah.
in the next 11 days.
Let's name them off. What can you can vote.
You can vote right now.
Yep.
You can vote early through November 3rd.
If you've already voted, you can talk to your friends about voting. You can ask them if they have a voting plan.
If they need a ride.
Exactly. You can volunteer for a campaign.
You can still knock on doors.
You can make phone calls.
Yes.
You can send, I'm pretty sure you probably send some last second postcards. I'm not positive, but there are ways to get involved at your comfort level.
Yep.
If you really feel like you need to get the message out there. I mean, really, it's about, as Jane said, and we're going to keep pushing this narrative, it's share what you know.
Share what you know.
Talk to your friends. Have that hard conversation.
Well, and I just think the more you know, in case anyone asks you,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what is this constitutional amendment? It looks fine to me. Well, this is your chance to jump in and say, here's what this constitutional amendment will actually do.
Yeah.
So, as Greg said, share what you know. Take it out there. Take it to your friends. And then take them to the League of Women Voters Wisconsin's website. And you can clarify it for them. Because, again, they want to change one word. This constitutional amendment will change one word from every U.S. citizen can vote to only U.S. citizens can vote. That's already the case.
Yeah.
That only U.S. citizens can vote. That is already the law.
Yep.
So again, it seems so often with our Republicans, they come up with solutions in search of a problem.
Yes.
This is not a problem.
Yeah.
So I will be voting no on the constitutional amendment because in my estimation, this is just going to open the door for them to narrow the definition of who is a U.S. citizen.
And do not let yourself be fooled. This is not a move to further voter integrity. This is revenge, vengeance, whatever you want to call it. When the two constitutional amendments failed during the primary, yes, pretty handily, Robin Vos made it clear they're going to keep on doing this. So I don't really think that they care too much about voter integrity. They just want something to do. And they know this is divisive, and they know that the language is vague, and that's why you need to educate yourself. That's what we're doing too, and we're sharing what we know. We're not experts. That's why we tell you go to the League of Women Voters Wisconsin website. They break it down very, very well.
Yes.
So share what you know, get out there and vote, make a plan, help friends with voting, talk to them, get involved. And then I will say this then too, Jane, treat yourself.
Yeah, treat yourself. Absolutely. 855-752-4842. Jean from Eau Claire is on the line. Good morning, Jean. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, guys, and continue listening to Matenaer on the Air because they have great information that are factual based. I'd like to give a shout out for tomorrow morning. I've been listening to this since he started, James Santel.
So good.
And,
yeah.
Yes, and he has an outstanding show. He It's now called Amicus, a law review. It runs tomorrow at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And people who know me say, I've never seen you get up so early. And here's something with your paper and pencil ready for law school. He's outstanding. And you guys are doing a fantastic job. Thank you for the League of Women Voters. I never knew that before, and how one word could impact all of us, especially women who have to go back and find their marriage certificate or their divorce certificate. So thank you very much, and keep up the great work, guys. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Jeez, you make our day.
Yeah.
You really do. You're such a nice ego fluff. I can't thank you enough.
I feel like Jeannie works for Civic Media. She doesn't, but I feel like she's just so positive, and she's like doing bumper ads for other shows,
which is great. And seriously, James Santel's show is so good.
Yes,
he is so knowledgeable. He really breaks it down, and I'm sure you can text in questions for James, and he would be happy to respond to those as well. And again, the number is always the same. It's 855-752. 4842. Right now, too, you can leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. So ignore the polls.
Ignore the polls.
Ignore the ads.
Ignore the hype.
They're so the ads right now are so obnoxious.
Yeah.
And endless.
Yeah.
They're just endless. So rather than make your determination on who you're going to vote for by watching these ads, why don't you investigate it a little bit? Go to civicmedia.us/vote. We've got Dan Shafer's great voter guide on the Civic Media website. It also has a link that will take you to myvote.wi.gov if you have questions there. But we have a lot of resources on our website. I would highly encourage you to check them out at civicmedia.us/vote. News is coming up next. When we return, we're talking tariffs. Who pays for them? How's that going to work? Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air, coming to you across the vast, statewide, countrywide, global Civic Media Radio Network.
If I let you see this place where stories all ring true, will you let me past your face to see what's really you? It's not for me, I ask this question as though I were a king. For you have to love, believe, and feel before the burst of tambourines take you there. Green grass and high clouds forever, castles of stone, soul and glory. Lost faces say we adore you, as kings and queens bow and play for you.
Hello? Okay.
Good morning, James. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're sounding good. We come back in about 90 seconds.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Sweet Cal B coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Just a reminder, early voting is underway. You can go cast your ballot. Do it right now. You have through November 3rd to vote early. Go to civicmedia.us/vote if you are looking for more information. Excited to talk to our next guest. He is the head at OEC Group Milwaukee, which is a global freight forwarder and a leading company in trans-Pacific trade. James Vanderloo, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Jane, Greg, and Calvin. It's great to be with you all.
Well, this is something that we're hearing so much about, tariffs, and what tariffs means and who pays for tariffs. And so, James, let's start with the basics. What is a tariff?
That's a great question, and I listened to some of your conversation with Susan Rice yesterday, and she did a pretty good job of kind of explaining it, but also to go through it again. So its most innocent sort of interpretation, sort of the design, was to protect very specific industries and domestic company, and to sort of penalize bad foreign actors that were maybe taking advantage of certain trade policies or things like that. Sort of at its worst, and what it actually ends up kind of becoming over the years, is basically a price hike on domestic consumers, because you're basically penalizing the companies here for importing those goods, and then they pass on those cost increases to the consumer at their end of their day. And actually what it does beyond that is it raises the demand for domestic goods. And then we all know the rules of supply and demand. So those prices also go up. So again, it's one of those things that maybe started out with good intentions, but it's not really a policy that we've used for a very, very long time in our history. And it's something that rarely, if ever, ends up having the desired effect that they intend it to.
Well, and again, the cost of these tariffs lands on the consumer. If I am making wooden dolls in China and I want to import my wooden dolls into China and we slap a 25% tariffs on that, then this toy maker is going to charge the people who are buying it here more for those dolls, and then they're going to charge their customers more, correct?
Correct. And that's definitely the case and definitely how it works. And specifically in the case with China, they're a little bit different because they're able to actually subsidize their local goods. So actually the net effect, it doesn't even really hurt them. It ends up just hurting the American consumer.
Then you have to wonder where someone would get the concept that tariffs are going to be this big financial windfall for America, and then we're not going to have taxes anymore because we're going to be making so much in tariffs that it's going to pay for everything.
Correct. Tariffs are, a lot of things. What they certainly are not as a panacea or something that's going to cure all of the woes in our government. It's really interesting. I know that Trump's been obviously talking a lot about tariffs, and I've always had a negative sort of opinion about it. And so I kind of watched and kind of heard what he was saying, and I think he was speaking in front of a barbershop, and he elicited, I think, 1890. Which was the McKinley Act, and if you actually go, and he was like, we need to go back to this trade policy of the 1890s, and I'm no historian, but I think things have changed a lot since then. And beyond that, if you go back and look at the McKinley tariff, which was in 1980 during the Benjamin Harris administration, what happened was they increased tariffs like by 35% all across the board. And what ended up happening is that the farmers got totally screwed.
Destroyed.
Because they had to pay a lot higher. They couldn't pay for their manufacturing equipment. And because of that, we've never really implemented tariffs at the levels that we're doing. And he's looking to go back to similar levels at this point. So I don't get it either.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me he wants to go back to 1890. He wants to go back to 1798, where you could throw anyone out of the country and lock up reporters. I mean, he's a guy who loves the past. But, before this show, before working for Civic Media, I knew nothing about tariffs. And I feel like what I've learned about it is that it's seen as such an easy fix to make people happy. And when I hear someone throwing around the way of saying 2,000% tariff, how does that not ring a bell with anyone to go, at least within, I'm not going to ask his supporters, but like even within the media, be like, yeah, that's ridiculous. A 2,000% tariff, especially in a country he doesn't see as an enemy or an adversary. He loves China. Why would he do that to another country like that?
And you bring up a great point, because there's this idea of retaliation that happens a lot with tariffs. So Canada just recently did a similar tariff imposition on EVs and goods and things like that. And what China basically did was crash the price of canola in the market. And so it has wide-ranging effects. A lot of times, and even with his past, the past tariffs for his previous administration, it really only created 2,000 jobs. And if you look at it from a cost benefit ratio, that ended up costing about $800,000 per job. So it's a very expensive way to get job growth. And really the only people that grew the jobs were foreign companies like LG and Samsung setting up shop here. So again, that's why a lot of economists, that's why a lot of people who look at this stuff a lot really don't think that tariffs are a great idea.
If you're just joining us, James Vanderloo is our guest. He's the head at OEC Group Milwaukee, which is a global freight forwarder and a leading company in trans-Pacific trade. And yes, we are talking about tariffs. James, you must talk to a lot of other business people who are in the same business that you are. They can't think that this is a good idea.
Well, and I remember even when they first had the tariffs, I remember kind of having to actually drive around and go pick up checks as quickly as possible, because what happens is that when these tariffs go underway, all of a sudden your price of goods goes way up. You owe much more to the much more to the government as a business, and all of a sudden they can say, well, your customs bond's no longer going to be valid because you're bringing in a way higher duty than you were in the past. So I remember going around all over the place picking up $30,000-$40,000 checks where we had to get in within 24 hours so that they could do that. Additionally, I've talked to a lot of businesses around Wisconsin, and they kind of say like, hey, if Trump wins the election, I'm going to be calling you the morning after, and we're going to be having to have some really tough conversations about getting things out of Mexico or moving things other places, because it's definitely one of those things that it escalates very quickly, and then you're also going to see a rush of people bringing in that stuff prior to the tariff implementation, which is going to increase the cost of freight, which is going to increase the cost of everything. So that's just another added layer of costs that are going to be passed on to the consumer.
I wish you could I know that's a lot of text, but I wish you could put everything you just said on a billboard, because there's this notion that, one side is pro-business, one side isn't, and I don't think that's true at all. And this idea that you are like, if he wins, you probably will have 2 to 3 days of phone calls alone and meetings saying, we need to seriously uproot these companies because now they are going to be in a place of financial possible ruin. Meanwhile, you have the guy still saying tariffs are going to fix it. And being pro-business. It's mind-boggling to me personally. I can't imagine what you're going through right now, James. I mean, it's like you work for a company. You're not a political expert, but here you are talking politics and what it does to affect you and your businesses.
And certainly, and I got to say, like in our industry, we're dealing with things internationally, so there's always problems. This is kind of like a Tuesday for us in some ways, but there is also this is definitely something that will have far-reaching implications. It will certainly affect the economy in the short term, most likely negatively. We all assume that jobs will come back. But with automation and different things like that, that's not an assumption. And with unemployment rate as low as it is right now, it's tough to see where that demand comes in. But the real problem is the long-term effects. We don't really know. We're playing a game of Russian roulette. We're playing a game of chicken, basically. We don't know who's going to retaliate. Is it going to be us versus the rest of the world? Is it going to be us and the Western countries versus China? These things escalate, and we saw that obviously happen last time these types of tariffs were implemented with the Section 301 tariffs. So you're absolutely right. It's going to generate a lot of chaos for sure.
Well, and think of the current state of the economy. Granted, grocery prices are high, mortgages are high, houses are expensive. But if you look overall at the economy, the stock market has been hitting records for months. Yeah. The unemployment rate is half of what it was 4 years ago.
Inflation's at 2.4%.
Yeah, so we're, at least globally, James, the U.S. is in a pretty good economics place compared to other countries.
You're absolutely right. China faces some huge problems demographically over the next few years. Growth in Europe is pretty sluggish. You're seeing U.S. is really the shining beacon right now, like you said, relative to a lot of countries. I know a lot of people don't feel that, and there are certainly some struggles going on, but we are the ones that are still having strong economic policies, and so that's kind of one of those things where it's tough to tell people who are really hurting at the grocery store trying to buy a house. It's tough to convey to them that relative to the rest of the world, actually we're not in the worst case.
But it certainly sounds like these tariffs would make things far worse for all of us, just across the board. And correct me if I'm wrong, James, too, but one of the ideas behind tariffs is that if we don't allow companies to import these products, then we will start making them in the U.S. instead. Now, that's all well and good, but that's not something that happens overnight. That takes time to start a business, correct?
Correct. And one of the things that we are, looking to do right now is obviously semiconductors are a big thing that we're all concerned about, especially with the possibility of China China possibly invading Taiwan sometime in the future. What a lot of people don't know about those semiconductors is it requires at least 9 different countries. It requires expertise from all over the world. So we're in a very globalized position right now, and that infrastructure takes at least 10 years to build. And during that time, you're going to have all of these capital costs, which that capital cost is obviously higher with the higher interest rates right now. It's very expensive. You got to get people trained. You got to get it's a very, very long process. It does not happen overnight, and that's kind of why it's sort of a difficult thing to predict and see what's going to happen. There are some industries like we've had a lot of production going down to Mexico. You're seeing decoupling going from China, and that's kind of that's led to other alternatives, but China's been really good at moving around to avoid those tariffs. So they can set up shop in Mexico, they can set up shop in Africa, they can go all over the place to sort of avoid those tariffs, but it's still a Chinese company shipping goods here. So, it doesn't really affect, again, the intended target.
Something you said just now, though, James, really sparked my brain here when you said it takes a number of countries working together to make this happen. You also need a strong leader who has good relationships with these countries. And right now with Trump, and I hate to harp on him, but he is a person who really works in favors and in vengeance and in, as you said, retaliation. And it's hard to build those bridges and those partnerships with a guy who on Wednesday could love you and on Thursday would be like, well, he didn't call me and say he liked me, so this is done. You can't have that sort of instability if you want to have these massive projects as you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I'll only use his words because like you mentioned, I'm not necessarily a political strategist or anything like that. But I know he does feel that our country is getting the short end of the stick with a lot of these trade policies, and I think he intends to make good on his promises that he's going to have some very aggressive trade policies with some of our not only people that we might consider opponents or rivals,
adversaries,
but also our partners as well.
Yeah.
And just to let you guys know, we still have a tariff in place from almost 60 years ago for cars coming from Europe. So these things don't go away once they're implemented.
We're going to continue our conversation. James Vanderloo is our guest. He is the head of the OEC Group in Milwaukee. We are talking tariffs. If you have a question, give us a call. Send in a text at 855-752-4842. We'll be right back. Keep it here on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Open up the blinds a Sunday afternoon. She wishes it could last forever, and he's begging her to stay. But she's got to pull herself together, 'cause there's a plane coming in from LA, and she's got one for the money, two for the show, to pay for the credit cards and to rock and roll. One gave her a wedding ring and a new car that she drives. The two gives her the feeling she needs, that once money came by, and she's got one for the money.
morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and the Calvinator on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Jabba the Musk hates that we continue to call Twitter. We are talking tariffs right now with James Vanderloo. He is the head of the OEC Group in Milwaukee, which is a global freight forwarder. So you have experience with tariffs. You understand how tariffs works, James. And I wanted to talk about businesses love stability, right? It's in order for any business, and this includes our farmers too, you need to have some kind of assurances so you can plan ahead for the next month or the next year.
Yeah, correct. Typically we see a little bit of flat to poor performance in election years just because everyone's sort of waiting for what to do, kind of waiting for what the next 4 years are going to go. Generally, business plans go from, they have 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year iterations. So that's definitely one of those things that they want stability in. And I can't reiterate it enough. This is really going to, if the tariffs go through at the levels that they go through, and again, when they're not targeted like they are, possibly during the, how Biden sort of utilized and how people in the past have utilized it very, very specifically, it can really throw off things in a way that we can't quite measure. It's really difficult to say what's going to happen. It could cost, hundreds of thousands of jobs, depending on how it works. It could cost, billions of dollars, depending on how it goes. It just really creates an environment that makes it very, very difficult for businesses to grow, especially if you're looking to grow outside of the U.S. market, which a lot of companies are. And that's and what's so interesting about it is that's one of the things that everyone wants to do is everyone wants the U.S. to produce more, export more, and things like that. And this really only complicates that, and that only makes it difficult. And actually, I think if you look at his past tariffs, you actually see a net decrease in exports because they weren't able to. There was retaliation, different things like that.
Well, and too, we talked about this earlier. This will have a big, big, big impact on our farmers.
Mm-hmm. And again, the concern that I talked about with the canola is a possibility with soybeans, sorghums, things that we send across the world. And what was so interesting is during COVID, a lot of times actually farmers hold off on shipping their goods because their margins are so small to begin with. When these giant spikes in transportation costs, or when there's huge amounts of congestion where, hey, all of a sudden, my product's going to have to sit there because there's a lot of congestion and it doesn't have a high shelf life. They just say, I'm sorry, we can't do business at the moment. And then what we have to do is give them subsidies to kind of act as a Band-Aid for the short term, but that doesn't solve their problem, and that doesn't really give them the reprieve that they need. So yeah, it can definitely affect the farmers as well. And again, that's why I went back to the McKinley thing, is like that devastated farmers. And that was one of the main reasons why we didn't implement tariffs, since then.
Well, and yes, hearkening back to the 1890s, it was called the Gilded Age for a reason, because a very, very small proportion of the populace had a really good thing going on, and the rest of us, not so much. I mean, the wealth gaps in the 1890s were huge.
Well, and let's not kid ourselves. We got the 20s, and then we had one of the greatest depressions to ever come from that. So, again, these things have consequences that are extremely difficult to measure. It's just one of those things where, it's if you look at really any economics book, a tariff is not really considered to be a good word. It's only been successful in a very, very small percentage of very, very specific things. And so this idea that this overarching policy is going to be the great cure-all to all of our economic woes is just seems to be, in my opinion, again, is a little bit misguided because of just, it doesn't take into account the fact that we have a very globalized system. Our supply chains are somewhat resilient, but they're not perfect. And these kinds of things can really break up long-lasting relationships that we've had. And then that's going to ripple out throughout the entire rest of the developing world as well.
You cannot go it alone economically anymore. Mm-hmm. You just can't. It is it's all too intertwined. We're all part of the same global economy. It is a global economy. Andrew from Maine texting in, listening on WAUK. One important aspect for me of tariffs as taxes is that tax policy has to go through Congress. The president alone can enact tariffs.
That's a really good point, and that's something that that's a great point, which is that this is basically a tax without going out and campaigning and saying, hey, we're going to raise your taxes, and that's something that we see a lot, and if you really talk to most anyone that's kind of dealing with this now in sort of the government, I think they're aware that tariffs are going to be around for a while. Again, it's just, if it's wielded in such an indiscriminate way, that's when this becomes a problem. There may be reasons why our government might need to use tariffs in the future, but again, what is being proposed is something that is beyond sort of the measure of anything that's realistic in our current conversation.
Well, as you've said, if it's a very specific, very targeted tariff, that's one thing. But this across the board, tariffs on everybody, tariffs for all, is going to have major, major economic impacts. It's been such an interesting conversation, James. We'd love to have you back. James Vanderloo is with the OEC Group in Milwaukee. Thank you for talking tariffs with us. Really appreciate your time.
Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
You
as
too,
well.
James.
News is coming up next. We'll come back with Dan Shafer for some recombobulation area. Stay close. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
We're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. We're in the money. The skies are sunny. Old man depression, you are through. You done us wrong. We never see a headline about a bread line today. And when we see the landlord, we can look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money. Come on, my honey. Let's spend it, lend it, send it rolling along. Never see a headline without a bread line today. And when we see the landlord, we can look that guy right in the eye. We're in the money. Come on, my honey. Let's spend it. spend it. Let's spend it, lend it, send it, rolling along.
Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Job of the Musk continues to actively ruin. Dan Shafer is here, as he is every Friday at this time from the Recombobulation area. Good to see you, my friend. Want to remind folks, early voting is underway. You can go and cast your ballot through November 3rd. If you're not sure what's going to be happening on November 5th, maybe you can't make it, maybe your car breaks down, maybe the weather is bad, so you can vote early. Go vote early. Go to myvote.wi.gov, go to civicmedia.us/vote, and you will find all kinds of information there, including this great voter guide that Dan Shafer put together. So, Dan, I want to start off with Popcorn King has checked in from his months-long vacation. Robin Voss yesterday on Twitter was responding to someone who said, it's really stupid that we can't start to count our ballots until 7 a.m. on Election Day. And Robin Voss responded by saying, I love this so much. It passed the state assembly, but Janelle lobbied to kill it in the state Senate, and they caved into her. So Robin Voss essentially throwing Janelle Brandtjen under the bus for making sure that a measure that would have allowed them to start counting the ballots earlier, they killed it in the state Senate because of Janelle Brandtjen, who, of course, was a big election denier.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't be surprised when Donald Trump comes out on November 5th at 10 o'clock and says he won, and then all of the complaints will start coming in about the late night counting of the ballots. That's because of the Republicans. You can thank Devin LeMahieu.
Absolutely. You can
thank
Devin LeMahieu. You can thank Dan Knodel, who is the chairman of the Senate's Elections Committee. So I did a piece on this earlier this week, published at the Recombobulation area. It was kind of some bonus content from our voter special on Civic Media that went through explaining Milwaukee's late night ballot dump, why it happens, and why the efforts to reform this process stalled. So Robin Voss is correct in one sense that the assembly did pass a bill. It passed unanimously out of committee. The Republican on the committee, Scott Krug, I had a chance to talk with him. He talked about how he worked with the ranking Democrat, Lee Snodgrass, on the committee to craft this legislation to allow clerks to process absentee ballots the Monday before Election Day.
So 1 day early, just
so
one day early.
Yeah. And Krug talked about, he met with voting officials in Florida because following the 2000 election, Florida put in a bunch of different reforms to their process to allow them to really speed things up. And now they are one of the fastest states in the country to report their election results. But there are actually just 2 states in the country that do not allow their clerks to process absentee ballots until Election Day. It is Wisconsin and Pennsylvania.
Of course. The two of the most important swing states are not allowed to start early counting of the ballots. This was, in my mind, Dan, this was by design. They killed this intentionally so they can continue to use this false story about election fraud.
Right.
They did this on purpose.
Absolutely.
So they can continue this lie. And that's what it is. It's a lie.
Right. And Robin Voss is really it's really rich that he's saying this about Brandtjen now, because this could have been addressed following the 2020 election, immediately following. They didn't take up a bill on this until 2023, until Scott Krug became the head of the Assembly's Elections Committee. You know who Robin Voss made the head of the Assembly's Elections Committee following the 2020 election?
Was it Janelle Brandtjen?
It was Janelle Brandtjen. Yeah. So maybe it's the hot dog meme here, right? It's like, who we're all looking for the guy who did this. We're all looking for the real culprit here. And even in the run up to the 2020 election, back when the Republican state legislature earned the distinction of being the least active full-time state legislature in the country, they could have addressed this anytime that year as well. They even had the support of the Milwaukee Common Council and Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson to do that at the time, and Robin Voss did nothing. So for him to just blame this solely on Janelle Brandtjen at this point, it's a little
disingenuous.
It's typical Voss.
Yeah, little disingenuous.
It's pure Voss. It's just I don't understand how he used to just not fall in line. He used to create the rules. I mean, he's Robin Voss, but now it just seems like, he gives Mick Gableman a bunch of money to investigate the election. It's fine. The elections are free and fair. Don't listen to Gableman. Branson's the one who did this to you. I'm fine. I'm going to go to Brazil. By the way, you're all paying for this.
Yeah. All of his chickens are coming home to roost. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you guys can let him know now that you're in Racine. Pay him a visit in the western part of the county.
I'm sure he would love to stop by. We'll give him some Kringle.
There you go.
We can share a Kringle.
In exchange for some popcorn. Quid pro quo, baby.
Yeah, quid pro pop.
I was going to say quid pop pro.
That too. Dan Shafer is here from the Recombobulation area. Just started off talking about Robin Voss yesterday throwing Janelle Branchen under the bus for a measure that would have allowed us to start counting our ballots one day earlier that every other state in the country does, except for Pennsylvania.
Except for Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Yeah. So I would encourage your listeners here to go to the Recombobulation area and check out the piece, Milwaukee's Late Night Ballot Dump Explained, because it's a 10-minute clip. It's an audio segment. The written transcript of the whole thing is there as well, but explains what the law is, what they tried to do, and why things are going to be the same as they were 4 years ago. And I had a chance to talk with Paulina Gutierrez, who's the newly appointed head of the Milwaukee Elections Commission, about some of their efforts and some of their expectations for when that ballot dump will occur. Because 4 years ago, obviously there were far more absentee ballots than there had been in prior elections. So it took, because they couldn't count them until 7 a.m., starting 7 a.m. on election day. They counted from 7 a.m. on election day until 3 a.m. The following night. These files have to upload and whatever, and they have to be brought by a secure.
They're escorted by the police.
There's a police escort, yes, from the central count to the county courthouse. And again, this is a very transparent process. They're basically live streaming the entire thing. But the new director said, that they're not expecting as many absentee ballots as last time, but the use of absentee ballots, which includes early voting by drop box, voting by mail, all of those different options, they are expecting that trend has been up over election year, obviously, even with the 2020 spike aside. She said they are expecting about 80,000 absentee ballots to be cast just in the city of Milwaukee alone.
Wow.
There were 66,000 cast for the gubernatorial election 2 years ago. So they're expecting the presidential to be a bit higher. And with the early voting efforts, it could even be higher than that. So they are again expecting a post midnight ballot dump in the city of Milwaukee. She said they've also. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to reinforce, this ballot dump is perfectly legitimate. We are doing things following the law. There is nothing hinky about this. This is how the process works. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Continue.
Yeah, and so they've also added, they've upped their staff at the Milwaukee Elections Commission from about 70 to 80 people at a typical election to about 300 for this year. They have 13 high-speed tabulator machines, which is the same number that they had in 2020. So even though the higher volume expected from 2020, they have the same number of machines equipped and ready to go. They are, and, Paulina Gutierrez, as I was talking here, she was saying, she's like, I'm a risk averse person. Like, I'm not going to put this out there, but I do think it would be probably after midnight that Milwaukee will be reporting those results from absentee ballots. So, and again, Milwaukee is a much larger, much more populous city than any other city in the state of Wisconsin. 80,000 votes alone. I mean, what would that be on its own? Like the fifth or sixth biggest city in the state of Wisconsin or something like that.
It'd be a little bit smaller than Kenosha. It's between Kenosha and Racine size.
Yeah. So, that's just the absentee ballots. Those will not be reported until after midnight. The Wisconsin state legislature had every opportunity to reform this process over the past 4 or 5 years, did not get it done. So we have to be putting this out there, putting this information out there now to educate the public that this is what it is. So let's go listen to that 10-minute segment I put together at the Recombobulation area.
And I just want to clarify something. They didn't just not get it done. They intentionally didn't get it done. That was done by design so they can continue this fallacy that there is something untoward and illegal happening. That's not the case at all. And we ask you frequently to share what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Go watch that piece that Dan is mentioning. So when your friends or your family bring up, oh, those illegal ballot dumps coming in at 3:00 in the morning in Milwaukee, you'll have the information to refute that.
And it's already in our show notes. So you can find it there in today's show notes, an hour 2 of today's program in the podcast notes, links directly to the recombobulation area. Please, please, please have those conversations. When people bring up these things, talk about it.
Yeah. If they ask you about this or they make some comment about this, the more you know, the better it is. So get informed and share what you know. It's so important. Before we go to break, Dan, I just want to mention too this constitutional amendment that they snuck on this ballot, essentially changing one word from every U.S. citizen can vote to only U.S. citizens can vote. This is an effort to narrow the definition of who and only a U.S. citizen could be. I will be voting no. I think it's very, very telling that Robin Vos and Brian Schimming and all the other Republicans in Wisconsin haven't come out and talked about how great this amendment is, because it didn't work so well for them with the last two. So it feels to me like they're just like, shh, don't say anything, and then people will vote yes, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think people are getting tired of these amendments. I think, Voss
God
even
knows
said after the one failed that he wanted to do more of them. I think people are tired of this.
Stay with us. Dan Shafer is here from the Recombobulation area. He's also Civic Media's political editor. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calviente on the board. Coming to you live from our studio in Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. We are going to wrap up the show as we do every day now with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today's thing, Sister Act edition. It's a good one. It's a good one. So stick around.
We're singing.
So stick around for This Shouldn't Be a Thing, Sister Act edition, coming your way at 11:51. Dan Shafer is here from the Recombobulation area, also the political editor for Civic Media. Dan, Robert Coles, State Senator Robert Coles, we kicked off the show talking about that this morning, making his announcement yesterday here on Civic Media, talking to Mark Becker from Rational Revolution, that he will be voting for Kamala Harris. That's a really brave thing for him to do, I think.
I agree. And I worked with Mark on putting that story out at Civic Media yesterday, and got a chance to listen to that conversation before we published it. And it's a really powerful conversation. It's I think a lot of people have seen the clips that we've put out and the story that we put out yesterday. But, he sits down and talks with Mark about his decision for about 35 minutes. And that broadcast is on the Rational Revolution Civic Media show that airs every Saturday afternoon, but the podcast is already online. So I think it is a really moving conversation because aside from just like the big news that a guy who has served in the Wisconsin state legislature for 42 years and voted Republican in every election said enough is enough. I'm voting for Harris, and not just that he's not voting for Trump. I think this is a significant part of it too, and feels a little bit different from 2016 or 2020 when we had some of the more never Trump Republicans saying, like, "Oh, I'm writing in Nikki Haley or whoever on my ballot." Yeah. I think there's a difference now where I think people recognize the threat that Trump poses, the reality that so many people in his administration are just out and calling him a fascist at this point. Coles in the interview calls Trump a totalitarian, calls him a fascist, and talks about the people in his family who fought in World War II and just how much that means to him. And so I really encourage you to take a moment to listen to that full conversation if you have the opportunity, because it is a powerful one, and I think it does show real courage. And I think it says to people who might be in a similar position that this is okay, that it's never too late. We're here in the early voting started on Monday. Election day is right around the corner.
11 days.
11 days. It's never too late to do the right thing. And I think for all the people who might be shaming folks for not voting, for voting for Trump in past elections or writing in somebody else or whatever it might be, now is the time to do the right thing. And I have so much respect for Rob Coles for sitting down and having this conversation, laying out his reasons, and for having the courage to do the right thing. He said he knew he's going to face threats. He said he knew he's going to face blowback. Yes. But he also said, this is somebody who served in the Wisconsin state legislature for 42 years. He said in that conversation, I think this is one of the most important things I've ever done.
That conversation, everything, that story is all linked in our show notes today. So if you want to check that out from Civic Media, the story written by Dan, along with Mark Becker, it is in their show notes, so you can check it out. Well,
and keep in mind also, you don't have to be like Robert Coles and say anything publicly if you don't want to.
Right.
You don't have to tell anyone who you are voting for. There is a record that you cast a vote, but no one knows when you go into the voting booth who you are casting your ballot, you're casting your vote for. So if you need that protection, take it.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yep. Yeah. And one of the things, Dan, I don't know if you heard about this, and I mentioned this earlier in the show in the last hour, is that if you have any idea about the hardship that people like Rob Coles and Sean Riley and
even Mike Gallagher, going back to Mike Gallagher,
Congressman Upton from Michigan, those who are endorsing Kamala Harris are going to get blowback. If you want to know how hard it is and how freaked out they are about it, Doc Rivers did a get out the vote, just go register to vote, be a part, and he's getting death threats for voting. That's it. He didn't endorse. He just said, Just vote.
This is the political environment that Trump has created.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it does seem to be more on that side, that Republicans who step out of the acceptable circle get a lot of blowback, and they're putting themselves and their families in danger.
Yeah.
So think about how important this is, that these folks are willing to do that.
Yeah.
Because they see that Donald Trump is a danger to our Constitution and to our country.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the steps to this too, because, as part of the broadcast that Mark Becker put with Rational Revolution, they played clips from Liz Cheney's speech in Ripon before they talked about that. And I thought that, I've seen a lot of people on the left saying like, the Cheneys, what are we doing here? Come on. But this creates the permission structure for people like Rob Coles to become public with saying that they're not going to vote for Trump, that they're not just that they're not going to vote for Trump, but they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. So you have the event in Ripon. Mark Becker was one of the people who became part of the Republicans for Harris Walls organization or effort in Wisconsin, however you want to characterize it. And then about a month later, Mark has Rob Coles on his show. And so I think this is why these events with Liz Cheney are important, because you have this permission structure. And Tim Walz talked about this on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart earlier this week. I don't know if you guys caught that one, where Jon Stewart was like, God, do we have to do this with the Cheneys? And Tim Walz is just like, you see this happen, and it creates a pathway for other Republicans to say, all right, I see somebody I respect doing this. I can do this too.
And you don't have to come forward publicly and say anything.
That's right.
You're all alone in the voting booth. No one else knows. Dan Shafer joins us every Friday from the Recombobulation area and our political editor here at Civic Media. Thanks so much, Dan. We'll see you next week. News is next. Stay with us. You're listening to the vast, statewide, countrywide, global Civic Media Radio Network.
Hoping for a relaxing weekend. Once I get strapped in the 210, wheels up and we'll be rocking, getting out of frozen Wisconsin. I need you to recombobulate me. I want you to recombobulate me. I need you to recombobulate me. Won't somebody recombobulate me?
Hey, Tyler, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
All right, cool deal. I can hear you too. We come back from break in about 2 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and the Board Lord coming to you from our studio in Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. It's the same number, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching in the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, or the platform that Jabba the Musk continues to actively ruin. Coming up at the end of the hour, we're going to wrap things up with This Shouldn't Be a Thing, Sister Act Edition. If you ever have a thing that should not be, send it in to Greg and me at Jane Says at civicmedia.us, JANESAYS, Jane Says at civicmedia.us. Reminder as well, next Thursday, October 31st, is the deadline to request an absentee ballot to vote in Wisconsin. Make a plan to be a voter. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your friends and your family are registered to vote and have a plan to vote. Go to myvote.wi.gov. Go to civicmedia.us/vote and make sure that you are going to be voting. Also, if you go to civicmedia.us, I have a new blog up.
Oh my gosh, you write blogs.
I write blogs. I have a new blog up about a summer job I had. And yes, I actually found a way to make it relevant to the election. So if you want to check that out, go to civicmedia.us. It's right on the front page. He is from Milwaukee Record. Tyler Maas is here. Good morning, Tyler. We're going to find out about all the fun things you guys have going on because you do things no one else does.
We try. I don't know. We have to. We do our best. But yeah, I appreciate being on. Thank you.
Of course. We love having you and Matt on to talk about everything that's happening in Milwaukee, southeastern Wisconsin, coming up in November. Fall's here. Yeah. What's going on?
Well, yeah, November is a weird month of sorts. It's just, I feel like it's a lead up for Thanksgiving. It's either the lead up for the election, the recovery after the election. And I feel like a lot of people aren't really attempting to book events because of the approaching holidays or not really being sure of where our nation stands in general.
Sure.
So like, hey, I have a show on Wednesday, November 6th. Let's all laugh or whatever. We might not want to laugh. Who knows? But yeah, there's even with all that being said, there is a lot of enjoyable stuff happening. I kind of broke it down into a few standout music things, a few stand-up, or a few, I'm hinting, a few things in the world of stand-up that are interesting, and then some self-plugs, I guess, for some things we're working on.
Great.
And one random event as well. So I don't know exactly how we want to do this, but I could just lead in with the music or with the comedy.
Wherever you want to start. Wherever you want to start. Let's start with tunes.
Okay. Well, one show that I'll be at is happening next week. It's at the Rave. It's on November 2nd. The Menzingers. I feel like maybe Greg might be aware of this band. It's a long-running veteran Scranton, like where the office is based. It's a long-running, altogether awesome band in the like the punk realm, the alternative rock realm.
Okay.
They just put out their 7th album. I admittedly haven't heard it, but it's at that point where it's a band where they're going to play a few songs off the new one, and then they're just going to play the music everyone knows and loves. So that's happening on November 2nd. A few weeks after that, or a week and a half after, speaking of some elder statesmen, we have a Modest Mouse show at the Riverside Theater.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Modest Mouse is they're doing the 20th anniversary of their breakout album. Good news for people who love bad news. And I'm sorry, Greg.
I feel like I'm older than every member of Modest Mouse, so to call them elder statesmen just makes you like, okay, that one hurts a little bit.
Yeah, they're not old. I listened to them when I was in college.
That was 20
years ago.
He's been
Exactly.
brushing his gray hair aside and wondering what's up with his heart. So that's happening. And then I want to look a little bit locally. I mentioned the Thanksgiving like approaching, like the holiday. That also like the benefit I think around here is it also brings a few of the people that started here that they now live elsewhere. It sort of is a reason for them to be back home, and they book.
It's a homecoming week, yeah.
So yeah, we'll lead in with Sister Strings. I'm not sure if you're aware of them.
Oh yes,
Monique and Shanti Ross. They are classically trained musicians. They've also been seen pretty much everywhere. They were on SNL backing up. I think Brandy Carlisle.
They tour with her.
Yeah,
they are amazing.
And Ed Sheeran and Jason Isbell. They played with Joni Mitchell. And so, yeah, they are the pride of our hometown. I actually interviewed them in this very office for the now defunct My First Band show I used to do. And they are playing at the South Milwaukee PAC on the 22nd of November.
Oh.
You can go to YouTube and look for them, because I'm sure you can find some videos of them.
Yeah, we also we did a music video with them way back before they broke out, when they would work with
back when they were cool.
No, they're really cool now. They were always really cool, but when they were when I wasn't absolutely afraid to reach out to them to work with us on something. So yeah, they're great. And then the following day at the Vivarium is a homecoming show for Buffalo Gospel. Their frontman, Ryan Nacy, he is a professional songwriter who's now based in the Nashville area. And they always play one show in the hometown every November, and this is it. And he'll be joined by Joseph Huber and Maximiano, an up-and-coming singer-songwriter.
Nice.
And
you can find all this
23rd.
And you can find all this information, tickets, and you can find the information on Milwaukee Record, I'm sure, and then it can take you to the various places that have the tickets available. Yeah,
we do a weekly record recommended thing. So the weeks of these events, they'll be listed. I also do a welcome to this month. Here's what's happening. So that article will be out on Friday of next week, and that will have all of these that I mentioned. I'm sure it'll read better than it sounds as I'm like on the radio nervously here. But,
you don't have to be nervous with us.
You're just talking to us,
You're
buddy.
just talking to us.
Yeah, I'm being interviewed by one of the artists from the Pack Arena, I realized.
Yes, that's true.
Now I feel especially starstruck.
I did not know that, by the way, until I think 3 weeks ago. I made a reference to the Mac Arena, and then you, Jane, said the Pack Arena, and you then said, I wrote that. I'm like, I'm sorry.
I was one of several who wrote that.
Well, you were the most important one. I mean, you were the John Lennon to this tune here.
Yeah, okay.
The one everyone remembers.
Mike Clemens, who works for us, also was part of the Pack Arena.
There you go. I mean, I didn't know I was working with
You have to
royalty.
bring it
That's all
back.
I'm
You
saying.
have to bring it back for the Super Bowl run this year.
Bring it back, Arena.
I'm going to have to bring it down a couple levels. My voice has gotten a little lower since I first recorded that. Oh, God, all those years ago. If you're just joining us, Tyler Maas is here from the Milwaukee Record, and we're talking about all the wonderful things there are to do in Milwaukee, entertainment-wise, and across southeastern Wisconsin. Let's move on to some laughs, Tyler. What about
let's
what's
laugh.
happening with stand-up?
I'll start with, this is actually, I'll be bouncing around to all different venues. And so I will start with Eugene Merman, who will be at the aforementioned Vivarium on November 7th. You might recognize his voice from shows like Bob's Burgers and Archer. He has been at it I think he got his start in and you'll let me know if I'm wrong here, Greg, the New York City alt scene in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. He's been around for a long time.
He's been working pretty steadily ever since. He's great. He'll be in town as a part of a night he is, I think, billing as an evening of whimsy and mild grievances. So
see that.
Oh, I like that.
And that, yeah, Jane, right up your alley.
God, I love whimsy and mild grievances is great.
That's the one thing with Eugene Merman. If you don't know him, he has a style. He's almost a comedian's comedian. I saw him open for the Flight of the Conchords. You have to Yeah, exactly. You have to be willing, open to a different kind of comedy, not just like, hey, everybody, I just flew in from Cleveland.
Yeah, set up punchline, set up punchline. That's
and
cool.
It's also a lot of the picks that I have here too. I'm recognizing when I'm doing this right in the wake of the election. So I feel like the last you want to hear is like, how I'm gonna fix things, or here's what I think about blah blah blah. So this is all in the more kind of nebulous, more like
lighter.
Lighter stuff, because I think we all need it. So a week or two after that, actually, if I may do this, the Laughing Tap. This is a show I'm especially excited about. I'm not being paid for this. I bought my tickets already. From the 11th until the 16th. Legendary Dana Gould will be there. He has been around since I think the early 90s.
He's been around since the 80s. He's been doing it for like 40 plus years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
Respect, baby.
He also was a writer and a producer on The Simpsons. He might still be involved with The Simpsons. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he is a veteran stand-up. He's great. He was, I think, supposed to be at the Laughing Tap in spring or June. And it had to be rescheduled. So I'm really happy that it's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I'll be at one of the shows. There are 5 shows overall. I will not let you know which one I'll be at. So no stalkers.
Well, yeah, he doesn't want to be swamped by people asking for autographs. It's it's very disruptive.
Hey, I liked your Taco Bell article 9 years ago. Thanks.
I was there for that article. I will say those tickets are selling. He is another one of those comics. People really love him. And there's 5 shows Thursday through Saturday. Get your tickets now before they are gone.
And it's laughingtap.com.
Yeah.
And I should say, when they are gone, once that show sells out, you'll have an alternative. You can go over to Brookfield to the Milwaukee Improv and see Sam J. She's a real up and comer.
Yep.
She has a show on HBO or had recently. I think I let my subscription lapse, so I've been out of the game. But she had a special on that very network or platform as well. I think this is her 3rd weekend at the Improv so far. And I feel like it will probably be the last because the name is rising. It's going to be a Riverside thing next time, or maybe even the Arena. I'm not sure. But cool. If you there's a show on the 15th and on the 16th, and I don't know the website. In subsequent visits, I'll have the websites ready as well. But just look for Milwaukee Improv. Sam J. Jay is the last name. And let's wrap it up with the most difficult to subscribe to describe. Maria Bamford. There's no one like her. She is her brain works in a different way than all of ours, and it's a beautiful, strange, great mess. And I have no idea what to expect, but I know I want to be there.
Yeah.
That'll be at, I think, Turner Hall.
Yeah, it's at Turner Hall. Maria Bamford is, I applaud you, Tyler, in trying to explain Marie Manford. She is her own comic. No one can sound like her. No one. If you try to be her, people are like, just don't be her.
She dips into weird voices and characters. It's like you're watching a person's like in the midst of like a manic episode in the best way.
Yeah.
And she did a special in front of just her parents, like a recorded special at her home, like in front of just her mom and dad. And
that's hilarious.
And she's also Minnesota based as well, or that's where she grew up. So it's a Midwestern homecoming of sorts. And yeah.
Well, we only got about 2 minutes left, Tyler, a minute and a half or so. What are you hosting? What's Milwaukee Record hosting?
A few plugs here. Well, we talked about football. We have a recurring series at the Cactus Club, the Milwaukee Record halftime show. On November 3rd, I will actually be involved in a project, Alkaline Quartet. It's an Alkaline Trio cover band. I can't say it's good or bad, but it's interesting and it's fun to do. And those shows are free. They're all ages, and there are specials on buckets and all that good stuff. We're showing Escape from New York, the 1981 John Carpenter.
With Kurt Russell.
Yes, and Ernest Borgnine and a handful of others. Isaac Hayes, you could forget that. That'll be at the Avalon on the 20th. And we have some ads and a recent article about that as well. And then we have a midweek music series at the Crafty Cow in Wauwatosa. That is Wednesdays or Thursdays. We kind of bounce around based on if the Bucks are playing. We want to not have singer-songwriters and Giannis in the same space. Yeah. But that is a free series. There are specials on drinks and all that stuff. And that's happening every week. But one from Old Pup is on November 21st.
Tyler Maas is with Milwaukee Record. You can find them online at milwaukeerecord.com. Yep. And he'll have all the information there that we were just talking about. Tyler, thank you so very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll see you in about a month.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Stay with us. This Shouldn't Be a Thing is on the way next. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and the Board Lord coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. Join us. You can call. You can text. The number's the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Next Thursday, October 31st, is the deadline to request an absentee ballot to vote in Wisconsin. Make a plan to be a voter. Be a voter, baby. Everybody who's anybody is a voter. You can find out more at civicmedia.us/vote or myvote.wi.gov. Check your status. Make sure you are registered. It's super easy, and it's very, very important. You might not think your vote matters. It absolutely matters. Yes. It absolutely matters. So please make a plan to vote. I'm going to vote today.
Excellent.
I'm going to vote today. We had some changes. You and I, looks like you and I are going to be in Madison on Election Day. And on November 6th, we're going to be broadcasting from the Madison headquarters. So I want to get my voting out of the way today.
Yeah.
So after we get out of here, I'm going to go cast my ballot.
I'm very excited to go to Madison, but I'm also it's going to be a nerve-wracking day.
It will be a long day.
Yeah.
And if you need something to read, go to civicmedia.us. I have a blog.
Quit saying it with that.
Okay, I have a blog. I have a blog.
Calvin, we need to if you could get like a celebration of everything. Every time Jane says she has a blog, you play that music and we keep that momentum up. Pep it up, baby.
Pep it up a little bit. Go read my blog. It's about a summer job I had, and it actually relates to the election.
There you go.
You wouldn't think that's possible, but somehow that's what I came up with.
Yeah.
Okay, it is time at 11:53 for
This Shouldn't Be a Thing.
This Shouldn't Be a Thing is the Sister Act edition. An article that Greg found on CNN. Would you like to take us through this?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to the wonderful, quaint town of Erie, Pennsylvania, very battleground city in a battleground county in a battleground state. And a Republican canvasser was looking at the address, and, you know, the GOPs, they want to look for that voter fraud. They think there's voter fraud everywhere, ballot dumps.
Everywhere.
Bad scanning codes and all that stuff. And someone came across a house that had 53 voters registered at the address, and they said no one was home.
No one lived there.
So Cliff Maloney, who is a conservative operative and founder of the Pennsylvania Chase, which I'm going to not follow later, put in a post saying, you know,
on Twitter,
which was picked up by other outlets, saying that this house was voter fraud because of well, it turns out that house is a nunnery.
It's a convent
full of nuns.
53 nuns to be exact.
53 nuns of the Benedictine Sisters of Erie who live there, registered to vote, and once again, nuns find themselves in controversy, and they never thought this would ever happen to them.
Here's a quote from Sister Annette Marshall. We're used to being accused of things like being too active, and we've always been very vocal about peace and justice, but I've never been accused of fraud before or not existing. That institution has been in Erie since the 1850s. The nuns moved into their current building in 1969, partly financed by some sisters who formed a real-life musical sort of sister act group to raise money for this building that they could move into. We've been in Erie since 1856 doing good work. These sisters don't deserve to be put down by some misinformation that we're a sham, that we're a fraud, said prioress Sister Stephanie Schmidt.
And what's funny is that this Mr. Maloney fella, it says here in the article, which is in the show notes, heads up a group that encourages Republicans to vote by mail and is part of a larger, often coordinated network of conservatives who cast doubts on the security of elections. Make that make sense for me, Mr. Maloney, and all you weirdos who are buying into this.
It's about sowing suspicion.
Sowing suspicion, but then also telling them to be part of the problem? I don't know. All I know is I went to Catholic school for 12 years. I worked in Catholic youth ministry for nearly a decade. I worked with a lot of nuns. Most of them were amazing. I don't like it when people mess with nuns. These are women who give up so much of their life, so much of their time, and they're usually devoted to, as she said, peace and justice. And let them live their lives. Go knock on someone else's door.
Yes, they actually exist. Yes, there are 53 of them. Yes, they vote at that location. This was not voter fraud.
And I have a feeling they're not going to vote for the guy that you want them to vote for.
Is today's episode of
This Shouldn't Be a Thing.
It's not a thing.
No. Nope.
It's just completely not a thing. We have a very, very busy week coming up for you next week. On Monday, Andrea Watkins will be back. She is the author of the Substack, How Project 2025 Will Ruin Your Life. It's fantastic. If you have questions about Project 2025 and the effect that that would have on American democracy, I highly suggest that you check out her Substack. Andrea Watkins will be here Monday at 10:33. We're going to talk to Mary Hayes on Tuesday from the Bayfield Ashland County Democratic Party and talk a little bit about Tom Tiffany. And all of a sudden his affection for turning a park into a national park.
Yeah.
And much, much more. Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be here next week and much more to come. Thank you, Greg and Calvin and all of our engineers and everyone across Civic Media. Without you, nothing works. Thank you, most of all, for calling and for texting and for listening. It means the world. I hope you find some joy over the weekend and you have the chance to share it. Share what you know.
Yes.
And stay tuned. News is next. Keep it here on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you Monday.